Rumble Brothers.
Hey, what's going on? It's Corey from Mediocre Rumble Brothers, and this is my first impressions video on Expedition 33. But before we get started, I just want to ask if you can give a subscribe to the channel. It would mean a lot to us. Thanks. So let's just kind of get right into this. This is a turn-based RPG game that just came out on April 24th, and I've been playing it now for a couple of hours. I don't have as much time as I usually do during the week, but I've poured a bit into it now, and I think I got a good grasp over basically how the game works, and I kind of want to share my thoughts on it because, seeing a turn-based RPG come out of a new studio is really kind of interesting to me. Plus, I really like RPG games. I've been playing them my whole life, and as soon as I saw the trailer for it, I kind of wanted to buy it. I didn't want to look anything up about it. I wanted to just be fully surprised by it, and I was very pleasantly surprised by it. So I kind of wanted to go over a couple things and share my thoughts. And so the first thing that I wanted to go over is graphics. I think the game itself is charming. I think the visual direction for the game is awesome. I love the monster designs. The character designs are fun, though the minute details, anytime you have very fine patterns on things, you start to get some artifacting in general, but it's not overly distracting. I think it's like a weird place between stylized and realistic, but I do enjoy it in itself because it reminds me a lot of games like Lost Odyssey, which I've seen being thrown around as a monster comparison of classic games that have been kind of ignored over the years. And, so I think that they did a really good job just kind of fully developing this world. The battle sequences, they look amazing. The magic effects and the VFX of the game look amazing. The cutscenes, which kind of surprised me that they're not fully in-engine cutscenes and they feel like the story-driven parts are pre-rendered sequences, that at least it feels that way, and I kind of like that because it feels like I'm playing the classic RPGs. I love that the weapons change visually. I know that's like a little thing, but it took so long for that to be like a mainstream thing, and there's outfit changes too that you find throughout the world through like little hidden items or challenges that you do. The UI is very well stylized. It falls into the Persona-esque style, with it's very, I guess, exciting layout, but it fits well. Everything kind of is very cohesive, and I do enjoy that a lot. I would say that the atmosphere is a bit too much. I know that the painted world, or the world that you're supposed to go around in, is whimsical and dreamy, and so they have this like bloom and this deep atmospheric fog kind of everywhere, and in a way it's kind of distracting to me because I want to look out at these landscapes and see this awesome stuff that they have laid out, but there's just so much fog everywhere that it feels like I want to put my windshield wipers on or something to kind of see ahead. So I think that if you could kind of turn that down or something, that would be nice, but there's not much in graphical settings, at least on console, that kind of have those in there because you get quality or performance. You can turn motion blur and stuff down, but the atmospheric perspective is really aggressive in the game, and I think to a hindrance of like the great landscapes that they have laid out for you when you're walking around, whether it be a dungeon that are so themed, and it's so awesome to see them like that. The floating waters is I think where the first major boss is, or no, that's after the first major boss. But the dungeon layouts you feel very immersed in the world that they have laid out before you with the props, and it's very kind of surreal, which is really nice. The world map, it kind of surprised me. I didn't think there was going to be one. At first I thought it was like this weird side-scrolling thing, because the way that the camera was positioned, where you kind of just see where you're going, but it's like it operates like a world map in typical classic RPGs, and it's so detailed, and it's so nice because I find myself wanting to go explore areas that I probably shouldn't be in, just because of the points of interest that are scattered about really draw your attention. And I think that's a really cool, like, I mean, it's just very designed well, and you can find shortcuts in between certain areas of the world map. That way, you know, when you're backpedaling to go back and try to fight an enemy that you might have encountered in a previous dungeon that is labeled as hard, you know, you have a faster way to go there. There is fast travel, though I do think it's kind of weird, and maybe I just haven't interacted with the right menu yet, but the fast travel systems technically, from what I've seen so far, only work within the dungeon. I don't have like a world map. I think there is a world map that you can integrate with, but when I go to fast travel options from a save point in a dungeon, I don't get options from the other dungeons, a la Souls games where you travel from bonfire to bonfire. That being said, the fast travel menu within the save points is also mildly confusing because there isn't any visual aid to kind of remind you of where they are, and since everything has these like grandiose names to them, it's kind of hard to instantly remember what this place is. I mean, it's, you know, yeah, great fields or like whatever tree, you kind of get a landmark-ish kind of thing, but they have these different names, and with no visual aid, it's kind of hard to grasp when you're just kind of navigating the menu. And so, you know, moving into UI, I said in the battle, the UI is, you know, really well done, but the menu in the like character screen where you're just kind of handling your basic inventory, that to me, it feels really empty. There's only like 2 options in the upper left, and when you go into that screen for the first time, let's say you have a party of 3, at least that's where I'm at right now. I have the party of 3, and when you go into the menu, it's defaulted selected on the center character at the bottom, but if you want to go up and check your inventory, you have to move up to it, and it's kind of difficult to tell what item you have selected or which one of the elements in the UI you have selected in that menu screen. But the weird part is you don't really want to integrate or interact with that stuff in general, because when you click on a character, you're going to be able to then look through the same types of things. So what I probably would have done instead, or what I would have liked to see, is on the left side of the screen, just give me a characters button, or party or something, and then that takes me to the screen that selecting a character's name is going to be, because both those things are just going to go to the same place where I navigate between characters. Starting in the center character is kind of strange as well, because I have to navigate to the left or right when checking through the party. I know that's kind of a nitpicky thing, but it just feels kind of strange. Now, there is a few different things that you can do with the characters in this menu screen, where you can equip items, you can equip these accessories. There's a specific name like Pictos or something like that, but I'll just use accessories for ease of understanding. Accessories have skills, and skills you can learn permanently to equip the skills later on to the character through a menu that's on the right side of the screen. I mean, that's kind of nice, but everything does also have complex names, and because there isn't really a lot of other visuals that go to it, you're kind of faced with a wall of text when you're kind of navigating these things, and they do tell you the types of skills, and there's a lot of good synergy between putting the accessories onto the character versus the weapon that they have and the element that they have, and that goes more into the combat stuff, which I'll go over after this. But the menu itself isn't complicated because there's not really a lot of options. I just think that there was an opportunity to have more of the UI laid out on the left side of the screen, leaving the characters to interact with each other in more of a narrative way in the center part of the screen, similar to when you see them at like a campsite and they do a mini like event where Lune is playing the guitar or something. Yumiya does this. In Atelier Yumiya, when you go into the menu screen, there's kind of a dynamic thing where the party kind of comes together and into a still, but it feels more organic. Like what would they be doing when they're checking their inventory? You know, they're like hanging out. So it would be nice to see, like when you pause, the characters are in like a unique little animation of like maybe Gustav or Gustav is like, you know, fencing with the younger girl while the other chick is like, you know, watching them or something like that. And like these kinds of things would be, you know, more character driven and more fun, because I don't I don't need to ever select any of them independently if they're just going to take me to the same screen as like selecting a character one would be. Again, that's just a nitpicky layout thing. I think the UI design is really nice. Everything is very decorative, and that's fine. I mean, the color scheme is really easy to read. Because there's not a lot of information on the screen, it's, you know, you kind of just see what you need to see. They do the new item indicators, which is fine. It is weird that your new indicator also appears on your skill equipment if you have it auto-equipped when you already have just unlocked it through the level system, which, you know, more on that later as well. But anyways, I think the main menu is probably the weakest thing about the game so far, and I mean, that's not really saying much, because though you do interact with it often, it's not for very much time, because it's more of just it feels kind of meh, when everything else is just so, like, intentional. And then real quick, the audio of the game is amazing. From what I was seeing, the soundtrack is like 8 hours long. The music per the dungeons are really, like, easy to listen to. It's so on point with the area, and I could just see myself listening to the soundtrack just to, you know, do some programming or whatever in my free time. No problem. I just, everything about the audio just sounds really good. The impacts are great, and you know, the voice acting is awesome. I really do enjoy you know, the main character. He's, you know, Charlie Cox, Daredevil or whatever. Like, he does a great job, and every character I've interacted with so far has done a great job. So that's a massive plus, especially since you have to hear them for the entire game. It would be very unfortunate to have an Arc-Rise Fantasia situation. Okay, so moving into combat mechanics, for those that are big fans of turn-based RPGs, if you love Final Fantasy X like I do, you will very much enjoy this game. It has the exact kind of thing with the turn order up there, and you know, actions do, you know, kind of indicate when the player's going to go. You can see when the enemies are going to go, but it has a nice little mix of a lot of things that you know, I enjoyed from games over the years, like Final Fantasy's turn order, Shadow Hearts' timing events to land like critical hits. Legend of Dragoon's QTE does, you know, the same thing. So if you, like, when you do a super move or whatever, you get prompted with like a press the button at the right time. You know, Paper Mario does a similar thing like that. There's active dodge, parry, and jump, so that though you're playing a turn-based RPG, and if you're thinking back, like, you know, a retro turn-based RPG on like PS1 or like Super Nintendo, it's you know, it's more or less, you tell him to attack, you wait, they attack, then they attack you, it's over. I know that's very dated, but still, to see a turn-based RPG have so much activity, even though it's not my turn, is really kind of fun, because you're just fully engaged the entire time. And the thing I like about it is, like, in the turn-based aspect, is like the strategy behind it, right? Because it's like, well, I'm going to burn this enemy because I have a skill on this person that does critical damage to burned enemies, but I'm, you know, first I need to get her to switch to the 200% damage and then mark the enemy as well, so I can stack for like a huge thing. So there's a lot of planning ahead when you're playing. There's an elemental grid that fills up with spell types, which kind of reminds me of Chrono Cross. As you get, like, the color of the spells that you're doing starts to fill up. And then I've seen boss finishers, at least on the first boss, which kind of reminds me of Dart and Legend of Dragoon, finishing the boss. So I don't know how often they're going to do that, but the boss fights do feel really dynamic when you're playing them, because the bosses will engage with like planting. This one boss would plant flowers, so I got to take out the flowers before they use them for something. I never gave him a chance to even do it, so I don't even know what that move would have been. But and I probably shouldn't have been fighting him, but I landed every dodge, so it didn't matter if he could hit me for 1,000 HP. If you can't hit me, then, well, I'm just going to keep chipping away at your health till you're gone, and that's kind of what I did right there. So, you know, that was a fun boss fight, and that's what I'm talking about, is that, like, the skill behind the play of a turn-based RPG is more than just the synergy between balancing status ailments, and it's about like button timing as well. Whether you're going to try to do extra damage from the parry, or you're going to jump the like party sweep move, and then all of you together, if you time the R2 button, everybody attacks at once for a critical hit. And they have another mechanic that's really interesting that utilizes AP or action points, attack points, or whatever it might be, the points that you use to use spells. They have a aim and shoot button for like a secondary weapon where you can target weak points on enemies, and that doesn't count as taking a turn, but it does count as using an action point. And you can utilize all of those down to 0, so then you have to take a turn, but that turn is probably going to either be use an item or a regular attack or defend or something like that. Which the aim mechanic is really cool for, you know, these enemies are flying, which reminds me of Final Fantasy X and Waka. So it's like I have to shoot them, because if I go to attack them, they're just going to dodge. And so it creates, like, when the 3 enemies line up, you might fight them differently than another set of enemies that line up. And it kind of keeps the battles from being stagnant and samey the entire time that you play the game. Which, from what I also saw, some people have finished the game, but it's about 35 hours, and, you know, that's fine. I mean, I think the game's length is good. I wasn't a $70 game, which kind of surprises me as well, for like a new game like this. And that's a good thing. You know, I think that that's good for the industry in general. Maybe people will see this and start, you know, hopefully, maybe they'll start doing the same type of stuff. And so outside of the combat, there is the way that they handle items, which I really enjoy, and that kind of ties into their save system and their level system. And these things are really well balanced, I think, because you have a finite amount of items, and you can upgrade the amount that you have by finding special items to increase the item cost, rather than you having to go to like a shop and manage, you know, a giant item bag of like 300 potions and 400 revives, and you get this pool of items all at the end because you never even use them anyways. They allow you to have a set amount of items, and you can get certain skills that increase the use of the item. So now heals also get rid of status ailments and things like that. And when you use all of them, they replenish when you save the game. When you go back and you rest, all your items restore. And that is really great, because now every item that I find in game that's hidden is most likely an accessory or a weapon or money to buy stuff from these little secret shop things, or a cosmetic item, which makes finding items in the world map and in the dungeons like way more impactful. You know, there's a lot of times when I'm playing like other games where I go out of my way and I find a chest, I open it up, and it's a potion. And you're like, oh, that's 50 gold. I could have just fought like 5 enemies and bought 40 of those from the next town. Like this, it sucks to find that. But when you find like an ether, for example, in Final Fantasy X, that's like 1,000 gold. You know, it's like, oh, this feels better because I found an item of worth. But, you know, they want you to explore those dungeons, so they sprinkle these little items around everywhere to make it feel rewarding. But like, it doesn't really feel that great when you go all like out of your way and to find something that's, you know, less important, I guess. So it puts more importance on the collectibles and items that you find in dungeon and in the world map, which is great. And the saves also respawn all the enemies in the area, so you can, you know, XP farm, which is good. You find one, you can fast travel back and forth between some of the areas in those dungeons, so that if there was enemies that you like fighting more than like the hard enemy that you might have come across, you can just backpedal over there and then fight him, rest, fight him, rest, fight him, rest. And the save points also is where you level up. Now normally, like Final Fantasy 15 did this with the like pooling of experience, and then you go rest in an inn. And I didn't really like that, but that's because the inns were kind of far and few between. There's not a lot of towns and things like that in Final Fantasy 15, so it was very like, you have these set locations to where you get experience, but why would you go anywhere else other than the beach house place? Because that gives you the most bonus on the experience when you rest. So in this game, it handles the save points similar to like Dark Souls at a bonfire. And I know that throwing a Dark Souls reference into the game might seem kind of silly, but I mean, it's the closest thing right now that I can think of, where you sit at the bonfire in Dark Souls and you add, levels. So when your characters level up, you can rest at a save point. You can also check your attributes to see if you can get new skills, like new spells or moves or whatever to perform in combat. And they have attribute points that you can distribute yourself for like attack, health, defense, luck, agility. And it really kind of feels nice because the party is built the way that you kind of want to play it. So for me, I'm really pulling like a bunch of points into the main protagonist's attack and defense, because I was like, I don't really care about your health. If you have really high defense, they're not going to hurt you that much anyways. And since there's parrying, I'm going to take my chances with, dodges or parries. And that way he's kind of like my, not necessarily a glass cannon, but my tank that just dumps damage. And he doesn't need any health because I can heal him with the next character who has very high agility and very high luck, so that the crit level is high to make up for the fact that I don't have high damage output. But she might not have high health, but she's going to go often. And with the preemptive attacks that you can do by stunning them in the dungeon and then attacking their stunned body first, you get first go. So I don't really have a problem with that. And then for the younger girl, I think her name's like Maeve or something. I know that's terrible, but names at the first day of your work, it's impossible. So her set for me is more average build, but I am pulling her into strength and agility mostly because I want her to be fast and do a lot of damage. I'm going to risk her defense because at the same time I can just dodge, but she's the one that changes stances anyway, so she can get a defense buff by changing her stance. So if I play her correctly in combat, it doesn't matter if I'm not pooling defense as extra stacking, because I'll just use her movesets like it's supposed to be done. So the nice part about this is I didn't know anything about the game. I didn't want to look up anything about it at all. And I made a, decision to just I'm just going to buy it based off of the first trailer and see how it goes. And I am very surprised, and I am enjoying it a lot. So, it feels like the studio that made this game did love a lot of the games that I did as a kid. And I'm really hopeful that we get to see more games like this in the future. Not necessarily games that are just turn-based RPGs, because I love those games, but games that feel like the games that we enjoyed playing as a kid.